In this episode of True Crimes Unfold, we dive into the tragic case of Julie Ann Rodelas, a young model and TV personality whose murder involved shocking betrayal by her closest friend, Althea Altamirano. From Julie's abduction and the role of CCTV evidence to confessions that exposed a harrowing plot, please note that events and scenarios in this video may be graphic for some viewers. Discretion is advised. Details of the videos are taken from actual case files. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're listening from and what type of cases you'd like us to cover next, and we'll make sure to add them to our list. Don't forget to subscribe to get new stories as soon as they are released. Settle in, get ready, and let's begin. The quiet streets of Quezon City were suddenly disrupted by the discovery of a lifeless body lying on the roadside in the early hours of November 6, 2012. The victim, later identified as 20-year-old Julie Ann Rodelas, was a rising star in the modeling industry. Her future brimmed with potential, but her dreams were cruelly extinguished in a way that shocked even the most seasoned investigators. Julia's body was found near a dimly lit street in Barangay Talipapa. Witnesses reported hearing gunshots earlier in the night, but it wasn't until a passerby stumbled upon her body that the truth became horrifyingly clear. Julie had been shot multiple times, and her body bore signs of a struggle. The scene was haunting. A young woman with so much life ahead of her, left abandoned in the dark. Police quickly cordoned off the area, gathering evidence and searching for witnesses. The initial investigation painted a grim picture of a targeted killing. Julie's injuries suggested she had been deliberately executed, raising questions about who would want her dead and why. News of Julie's death spread rapidly, especially among those who knew her. Friends, colleagues, and fans of the young model were left in disbelief. Julie was a familiar face on television and in local events, known for her radiant smile and warm personality. To those who knew her, the idea that someone could harbor such malice toward her was unfathomable. Social media platforms became flooded with tributes and messages of grief. Photos of Julie, showcasing her talent and charisma, were shared alongside heartfelt captions. She was full of life and had so much ahead of her. One friend posted, "This doesn't feel real." Julie Ann Rodelas was more than just a model. She was a dreamer. Born and raised in the Philippines, she had worked tirelessly to carve out a place for herself in the competitive world of entertainment. Her friends described her as hardworking, ambitious, and deeply caring, someone who lit up every room she entered. Julie's career had begun to take off in recent years. She was frequently invited to appear at events and was building a name for herself in the local modeling scene. Despite the challenges she faced, Julie remained focused on her goals, often speaking about her desire to provide for her family and one day become a household name. But Julie's success wasn't without its struggles. Like many young women in the spotlight, she faced the pressures of maintaining a public image while navigating personal challenges. Friends hinted at underlying tensions in her life, though none could have predicted the tragic outcome that awaited her. As investigators worked the scene, they uncovered several critical pieces of evidence. The arrangement of Julie's body suggested that her killers had left her in a hurry. Gunpowder residue found on her clothing confirmed she had been shot at close range, indicating a premeditated act. A search of the area revealed a clue that would later prove pivotal. A crumpled receipt from a nearby McDonald's. Though seemingly insignificant at first, the receipt bore the timestamp of a purchase made shortly before Julie's estimated time of death. Investigators theorized that Julie or her killers had stopped at the fast food restaurant that night, offering a potential lead. CCTV footage from establishments near the crime scene was also collected, though it would take time to analyze. The detectives knew they were racing against the clock. Every hour that passed made it harder to track down the individuals responsible for Julie's death. As the investigation progressed, the public was left grappling with questions about the motives behind Julie's murder. Had she been targeted because of her growing fame? Was there someone in her personal life with a grudge against her? Or was this a random act of violence in a city known for its occasional bursts of crime? The most haunting question of all was one that resonated deeply with those who knew her. Who could have betrayed someone as kind and loving as Julie? Julie's death wasn't just a story of violence. It was a story of trust. Those closest to her described her as someone who valued her friendships deeply, often going out of her way to support those around her. Yet, as detectives would soon discover, it was this very trust that had been exploited in the most devastating way. One name quickly emerged during the investigation: Althea Altamirano, Julie's closest friend and confidant. Althea had been one of the last people to see Julie alive, accompanying her to a series of events on the night of her death. While she initially presented herself as a grieving friend, Althea's behavior would soon raise suspicions that would unravel the entire case. As Julie's family and friends mourned her loss, investigators began to piece together a timeline of her final hours. Interviews with witnesses revealed discrepancies in Althea's account of the night's events, while CCTV footage placed her and Julie at locations Althea had failed to mention. The seeds of doubt had been planted. Could Althea, the person Julie trusted most, have been involved in her murder? The possibility was almost too painful for those who knew them to consider. Yet, as the investigation continued, the evidence began to point toward a betrayal so profound that it would shake everyone who had ever been part of Julie's life. The case of Julie Ann Rodelas was just beginning to unfold, but its impact was already profound. Her death served as a chilling reminder of the dangers of misplaced trust and the devastating consequences of jealousy and betrayal. As detectives closed in on the truth, the question loomed: how could a friendship so close have turned into a nightmare so dark? Julie's story was far from over. The investigation that followed would reveal secrets, lies, and motives that no one could have imagined, ultimately painting a picture of a tragedy born out of betrayal. Julie Ann Rodelas wasn't just a model. She was a young woman whose life brimmed with promise and ambition. Born and raised in a modest household in the Philippines, she worked tirelessly to overcome challenges and carve a name for herself in the fiercely competitive modeling and entertainment industry. But behind the camera flashes and bright smiles lay a story of struggle, perseverance, and a friendship that would ultimately lead to her demise. Julie's journey to the spotlight was anything but easy. She grew up in a close-knit family that valued hard work and unity. Her parents supported her dreams of becoming a model, encouraging her to pursue opportunities in the entertainment industry. She wanted to give us a better life, her mother tearfully shared during an interview. Everything she did was for her family. Her friends described her as someone who radiated positivity and determination. Julie wasn't afraid to dream big, often speaking about her plans to expand her career and explore opportunities in television. Her charisma and natural talent earned her roles in small TV segments and modeling gigs, making her a familiar face in local fashion circles. However, life in the spotlight came with its share of challenges. Julie faced the pressures of maintaining her public image while dealing with the uncertainties of an unstable industry. Financial struggles often loomed in the background, and the competitive nature of modeling sometimes led to strained relationships with peers. Despite these obstacles, Julie remained focused on her goals, often leaning on her closest friends for support. Among Julie's friends, one relationship stood out: her bond with Althea Altamirano. The two women were inseparable, often attending events together and sharing their dreams and frustrations. Julie trusted Althea deeply, confiding in her about personal matters and relying on her for emotional support. To outsiders, their friendship seemed unbreakable, a sisterhood forged in the high-pressure world of modeling. Althea, like Julie, was involved in the entertainment scene, though her career hadn't reached the same heights. Friends noted that Althea often lived in Julie's shadow, an observation that some would later interpret as a source of quiet resentment. Julie was the star, one mutual friend remarked. Althea was always there, but it was clear who people gravitated toward. Despite their differences, Julie's loyalty to Althea never wavered. She invited Althea to join her at events and frequently included her in professional opportunities. Julie's generosity and willingness to share the spotlight were qualities that endeared her to many, but they may have also sown the seeds of envy in her closest friend. While Julie remained steadfast in her support for Althea, cracks began to form in their friendship. Friends noticed subtle changes in their interactions, moments of tension that seemed out of place in their otherwise close bond. Althea, once a supportive confidant, started exhibiting behaviors that hinted at jealousy and insecurity. There were whispers about Althea making offhand comments about Julie's success, as well as instances where she seemed dismissive of Julie's achievements. It was small things at first, another friend recalled. But over time, you could see it. Althea wasn't happy for Julie, the way a true friend should be. Despite these warning signs, Julie remained blind to the growing rift. She continued to trust Althea, believing that their friendship could weather any storm. What Julie didn't realize was that Althea's resentment had been simmering beneath the surface, quietly transforming into something far more dangerous. On the night of November 5th, 2012, Julie and Althea attended a series of events together, as they often did. The evening began like any other, with the two women laughing, chatting, and enjoying the lively atmosphere of Quezon City's social scene. But as the night wore on, the mood began to shift. Witnesses later reported that Julie and Althea had been seen arguing at one of the events. The topic of their disagreement remained unclear, but those who saw them described it as heated, with Julie looking visibly upset. Despite the tension, the two left the venue together, with Althea assuring others that everything was fine. It would be the last time anyone saw Julie alive. In the hours following Julie's disappearance, Althea's behavior raised immediate suspicions. She returned home later that night, acting as though nothing was amiss, and even posted on social media about the events they had attended. When questioned by friends and family about Julie's whereabouts, Althea feigned concern, claiming she had no idea what had happened. She was convincing at first, one friend admitted. She cried. She talked about how scared she was. But there was something off, something we couldn't put our finger on. The truth began to unravel when police interviewed Althea as part of their investigation. Her account of the night's events was riddled with inconsistencies, and her emotional outbursts felt rehearsed rather than genuine. It wasn't long before detectives began to suspect that Althea knew more about Julie's disappearance than she was letting on. As investigators delved deeper, they uncovered troubling details about Althea's past. Friends and acquaintances came forward with stories of Althea's manipulative behavior, including instances where she had used others for personal gain. While these accounts didn't directly link her to Julie's murder, they painted a picture of someone who was willing to betray those closest to her when it suited her interests. One chilling revelation came from a mutual friend who recounted an incident in which Althea had joked about knowing secrets that could ruin Julie's career. At the time, it was dismissed as harmless banter, but in the context of the investigation, it took on a more sinister tone. What could drive someone to betray their closest friend in such a brutal way? Investigators began piecing together a motive rooted in jealousy, resentment, and greed. Althea, struggling to establish herself in the modeling world, may have viewed Julie's success as a reminder of her own shortcomings. Her envy, coupled with financial struggles and personal insecurities, created a toxic cocktail of emotions that ultimately led to betrayal. Further evidence suggested that Althea's motives weren't purely emotional. Detectives uncovered text messages between Althea and a group of accomplices, hinting at a planned abduction. These messages revealed discussions about money, power, and control, raising questions about whether Julie's murder was part of a larger scheme. By the time police confronted Althea with the evidence, her facade had begun to crack. The woman, who had once been Julie's closest ally, now stood accused of orchestrating her murder. A betrayal so profound that it left Julie's family and friends reeling. For Julie, trust had been her greatest strength, but also her greatest vulnerability. The bond she had cherished with Althea had turned deadly, leaving a void that could never be filled. As the investigation progressed, the world would learn the full extent of Althea's betrayal and the heartbreaking consequences of misplaced trust. As investigators dug deeper into Julie Ann Rodelas' tragic murder, they began to uncover a web of deceit and betrayal more twisted than anyone could have imagined. At the center of this web was her closest friend, Althea Altamirano, whose actions would shock those who knew them both. What began as a routine investigation into a senseless killing evolved into a chilling tale of jealousy, manipulation, and greed. From the outset, detectives were determined to uncover the truth behind Julie's death. Initial leads pointed to a deliberate and calculated crime, not a random act of violence. The evidence found at the scene, the gunshot wounds, the hurried disposal of Julie's body, and the absence of any robbery, suggested a targeted attack. The investigators were left to answer two critical questions. Who wanted Julie dead, and why? Witness interviews and surveillance footage quickly turned the spotlight on Althea. As Julie's best friend and one of the last people to see her alive, Althea's account of the night became a focal point of the investigation. However, as detectives began to scrutinize her story, inconsistencies emerged, casting doubt on her version of events. During her initial statement to police, Althea claimed that she and Julie had parted ways shortly after leaving the event they attended together. She expressed concern and grief over Julie's disappearance, painting herself as a distraught friend, desperate for answers. However, surveillance footage from a nearby McDonald's revealed a different story. The footage showed Julie and Althea entering the fast food restaurant together late that night. They appeared to be arguing, their body language tense and confrontational. This contradicted Althea's claim that they had separated earlier. Furthermore, the timestamp on the McDonald's receipt found at the crime scene matched the time frame of Julie's final known whereabouts, placing both women together far later than Althea admitted. When confronted with this evidence, Althea faltered. Her explanations became erratic, and her demeanor shifted from cooperative to defensive. Investigators sensed that she was hiding something, and they were determined to find out what. The breakthrough came when police traced communications between Althea and two other individuals, later identified as Marvin and Brian. Phone records revealed a series of calls and text messages exchanged between the three in the days leading up to Julie's murder. These messages suggested a premeditated plan involving the abduction and eventual killing of Julie. When Marvin and Brian were apprehended and brought in for questioning, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Faced with mounting evidence, Marvin confessed to his involvement in the crime, implicating Althea as the mastermind. According to his account, Althea had orchestrated the abduction, convincing Marvin and Brian to assist her in carrying out the plan. Marvin's confession painted a chilling picture of the events leading to Julie's death. Althea, driven by jealousy and a desire for control, had devised a scheme to teach Julie a lesson. She enlisted Marvin and Brian, promising them financial compensation in exchange for their participation. The plan was simple but sinister. Lure Julie into a false sense of security, abduct her, and intimidate her into submission. However, as the plan unfolded, it spiraled out of control. Marvin revealed that Althea had grown increasingly erratic as the night progressed, pressuring them to escalate the situation. What had initially been framed as an act of intimidation culminated in Julie's murder. On the night of the crime, Althea convinced Julie to accompany her to an event, masking her true intentions behind a facade of friendship. After leaving the venue, they stopped at the McDonald's, where surveillance footage captured their tense exchange. Shortly afterward, Julie was forcibly taken by Marvin and Brian, who had been waiting nearby. Julie's final hours were filled with fear and confusion. She was driven to a remote location where her captors held her against her will. Despite her pleas for mercy, the situation escalated to its tragic conclusion. Marvin confessed that Julie was shot multiple times under Althea's orders. Her body discarded hastily in an attempt to cover their tracks. As the investigation unraveled the details of Julie's murder, Althea's motives came into focus. Friends and acquaintances described Althea as increasingly envious of Julie's success. While Julie's modeling career flourished, Althea struggled to gain recognition in the same circles. This imbalance created a toxic dynamic in their friendship, one that Althea hid behind a mask of loyalty and support. Althea's resentment was further fueled by her perception that Julie had betrayed her trust. According to Marvin, Althea had accused Julie of spreading rumors about her within their social circle, an accusation that investigators found no evidence to support. This perceived slight, combined with Althea's jealousy, became the catalyst for her deadly plan. Armed with confessions from Marvin and Brian, as well as evidence linking Althea to the crime, police moved swiftly to arrest her. The news of Althea's involvement sent shockwaves through the community. Those who knew Julie and Althea struggled to reconcile the betrayal with the friendship they had witnessed. Julie's family, already devastated by her death, was left grappling with the knowledge that someone she had trusted so deeply had orchestrated her murder. She was like a sister to Julie, her mother said in an emotional statement. How could she do this? The public outcry was immediate and intense. Social media became a platform for both grief and outrage, with hashtags like Bars Justice for Julie and Betrayal of Trust trending as people demanded accountability for those involved. Althea's image as the grieving friend was shattered, replaced by one of a manipulative figure whose actions had destroyed lives. As the case against Althea and her accomplices moved forward, it became a stark reminder of the complexities of trust and the devastating consequences of jealousy. Julie's story resonated deeply with people across the Philippines, sparking conversations about the nature of friendships, the dangers of unchecked envy, and the importance of recognizing toxic dynamics. For Julie's loved ones, the betrayal was a wound that would never fully heal. Her death had robbed them of a vibrant and caring soul, someone who had touched countless lives with her kindness and ambition. As the trial loomed, their focus shifted to ensuring that Julie's memory would be honored and that justice would be served. The betrayal that led to Julie Ann Rodelas' death was a tragic reminder of how trust can be weaponized in the most devastating ways. Yet, even in the face of such darkness, Julie's story became a rallying cry for those who knew her, a call to honor her legacy and fight for a world where no one else would have to endure the pain of such a profound betrayal. The investigation into Julie Ann Rodelas' murder quickly transformed from a tragic case into a shocking tale of betrayal and premeditation. As evidence mounted, a picture of manipulation, jealousy, and cold-blooded murder emerged, revealing a crime orchestrated by someone Julie had trusted most, her closest friend, Althea Altamirano. Detectives worked tirelessly to reconstruct the events leading up to Julie's murder. CCTV footage, phone records, and witness testimonies provided a clear timeline of the crime, though the motives behind such a heinous act were harder to comprehend. Every piece of evidence uncovered added to the chilling narrative of how Althea had turned Julie's trust into a deadly weapon. The McDonald's receipt found near Julie's body was one of the first crucial pieces of evidence. Investigators determined that the receipt matched a transaction made shortly before Julie's death, placing both her and Althea at the restaurant that night. CCTV footage confirmed their presence and captured their tense exchange. Althea, who initially claimed she and Julie had separated earlier in the evening, was now caught in a lie. Additional footage from nearby establishments showed Althea meeting with two men, later identified as Marvin and Brian, shortly after leaving the restaurant. This meeting became the linchpin in the investigation, pointing to a coordinated effort between Althea and her accomplices. Forensic analysis of Althea's phone revealed damning evidence. Investigators uncovered a series of messages exchanged between Althea, Marvin, and Brian, outlining a detailed plan to abduct and intimidate Julie. The messages, filled with callous language, discussed logistical details, such as the location of the abduction, transportation arrangements, and even the division of money promised to Marvin and Brian for their participation. One chilling message from Althea read, "Make sure she learns her lesson. She needs to pay for what she did." Though vague, the context of the investigation left little doubt that the message referred to Julie. The language and tone of the messages painted Althea as the ringleader, manipulating her accomplices into carrying out her twisted plan. Phone records also placed Althea at the crime scene during the critical hours of the night. Coupled with the physical evidence and her inconsistent statements, it became clear that Althea was far more than a passive participant in Julie's death. Marvin and Brian, apprehended shortly after Althea's arrest, quickly became key witnesses in the case. Under interrogation, both men admitted their involvement in the crime, but pointed to Althea as the mastermind. Their confessions aligned with the evidence gathered by detectives, painting a cohesive and horrifying picture of the events. According to Marvin, Althea had approached him weeks before the murder, offering him a substantial sum of money to help her send a message to Julie. He claimed that Althea had portrayed Julie as a backstabber who had spread damaging rumors about her, framing the abduction as a way to teach her a lesson. Brian, who was brought in by Marvin to assist, echoed this account, adding that Althea's demeanor had been cold and calculating throughout the planning process. Both men admitted to forcibly taking Julie from the car Althea had used to lure her. They described how Julie had pleaded for her life, confused and terrified by the betrayal. Marvin and Brian confessed that Althea had pressured them to kill Julie, a decision they claimed they hadn't initially agreed to, but ultimately carried out under her direction. The details of Julie's final moments, as recounted by Marvin and Brian, were devastating. After being abducted, Julie was taken to a remote location where she was held against her will. Despite her pleas for mercy, the situation escalated as Althea insisted they follow through with the plan. Marvin revealed that Althea had grown increasingly agitated during the night, urging them to finish it before anyone could trace the crime back to her. Under pressure, Marvin and Brian shot Julie multiple times, leaving her lifeless body on the roadside. They hastily disposed of any evidence they could and fled the scene, believing they had covered their tracks. For investigators, hearing these details was both heartbreaking and infuriating. Julie's death had been entirely avoidable, a result of petty jealousy and senseless cruelty. The fact that it had been orchestrated by someone she trusted made it all the more tragic. When police confronted Althea with the evidence, her response was a mix of denial and deflection. She insisted that she had no knowledge of the crime and claimed that Marvin and Brian were framing her to save themselves. However, her attempts to distance herself from the murder crumbled under the weight of the evidence. The messages on her phone, her presence at key locations, and the confessions from her accomplices painted an irrefutable picture of her involvement. When detectives revealed that Marvin and Brian had implicated her as the mastermind, Althea broke down. Though she continued to deny her role in Julie's death, public outrage grew as news of Althea's arrest spread. The betrayal at the heart of the case struck a chord with people across the Philippines, who struggled to comprehend how a friendship could lead to such a horrific crime. Social media was flooded with posts condemning Althea's actions and calling for justice for Julie. The hashtag #DarkJusticeForJulie trended for weeks as the public rallied around Julie's grieving family. With Althea and her accomplices in custody, prosecutors began building their case. The evidence against them was overwhelming, but the emotional weight of the trial would be immense. For Julie's family, attending the proceedings meant reliving the pain of her loss, but they remained resolute in their pursuit of justice. The case against Althea hinged on proving her role as the mastermind. Prosecutors emphasized the premeditated nature of the crime, using the text messages, phone records, and witness testimonies to establish her intent. Marvin and Brian's confessions, though self-serving, provided critical insight into Althea's manipulative tactics and her insistence on escalating the plan. As the trial approached, Julie's family and friends worked to honor her memory. Vigils were held in her honor, with community members gathering to share stories of her kindness and ambition. Julie's mother spoke at one event, her voice breaking as she described the loss of her daughter. "She was our light," she said. "We'll never understand why this happened, but we will fight to make sure she's remembered." The betrayal by Althea was a wound that cut deep, not just for Julie's loved ones, but for everyone who had followed the case. It was a reminder of the complexities of trust and the devastating consequences of jealousy left unchecked. For those who had known Julie, the trial was not just about justice. It was about ensuring that her story would serve as a warning and a call for change. Meaning, as the legal battle unfolded, the public grappled with the broader implications of Julie's death. Her story became a focal point for discussions about toxic relationships, the pressures of the entertainment industry, and the importance of recognizing red flags in friendships. Advocacy groups used her case to raise awareness about the dangers of jealousy and manipulation, emphasizing the need for vigilance and support in personal relationships. Julie's death was a tragedy, but her story would not be forgotten. As the trial drew near, the world braced for the revelations to come, knowing that the truth, no matter how painful, was the first step toward healing and justice. The trial of Althea Altamirano and her accomplices, Marvin and Brian, became one of the most closely followed cases in the Philippines. The betrayal, the shocking details of Julie Ann Rodelas' murder, and the tragic loss of a young life captured the nation's attention. For Julie's family, the courtroom was a place of heartbreak and resilience, a chance to ensure that justice would be served for their beloved daughter and sister. The prosecution presented a detailed and damning case against Althea, Marvin, and Brian. Their goal was to prove beyond any doubt that Julie's murder was premeditated and that Althea had masterminded the crime. Using evidence gathered during the investigation, the prosecution laid out a timeline of events that painted a chilling picture of betrayal and calculated violence. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence was the series of text messages exchanged between Althea and her accomplices. The messages presented in court revealed Althea's detailed instructions for Julie's abduction and her insistence that her friend needed to be taught a lesson. The cold and matter-of-fact tone of these messages shocked the courtroom, leaving no question about Althea's role as the architect of the crime. The prosecution also relied on CCTV footage that captured Julie and Althea together on the night of the murder. The footage showed the tense exchange at McDonald's, followed by Althea meeting with Marvin and Brian shortly after. Combined with phone records placing Althea at key locations, the evidence left little room for doubt about her involvement. The most powerful moments came from the confessions of Marvin and Brian, who both took the stand to testify against Althea. They described how she had manipulated them, framing the plan as a necessary act of retribution. Their accounts were consistent with the evidence, reinforcing the narrative that Althea had orchestrated the crime while they carried out her orders. Althea's defense team faced an uphill battle. With overwhelming evidence against their client, their strategy focused on shifting blame to Marvin and Brian, painting Althea as a victim of circumstance rather than the mastermind. They argued that Althea had been coerced into the crime and had no intention of harming Julie. Althea herself took the stand, shedding tears as she claimed that she had been manipulated by Marvin and Brian. She insisted that she had no idea the plan would escalate to murder and portrayed herself as a scapegoat for the real perpetrators. "I trusted the wrong people," she said, her voice trembling. "I would never hurt Julie." However, her performance was unconvincing. The prosecution highlighted inconsistencies in her testimony, comparing her claims to the text messages and witness accounts that contradicted her version of events. Her demeanor, described by many as overly rehearsed, further undermined her credibility in the eyes of the jury. One of the most emotional moments of the trial came when Julie's family took the stand to share the impact of her loss. Julia's mother, visibly shaken but resolute, spoke about the bright future her daughter had been working toward and the devastating void her death had left. "Julie was our hope," she said through tears. "She worked so hard to make a better life for us. We will never understand why someone she trusted could do this to her." Friends and colleagues of Julie also testified, describing her as a kind and ambitious young woman who had touched countless lives. Their testimonies served as a stark reminder of the human cost of Althea's betrayal, reinforcing the prosecution's argument that Julie's murder was an act of jealousy and malice. After weeks of testimony, cross-examinations, and emotional revelations, the jury retired to deliberate. The courtroom fell silent as everyone awaited the outcome, the weight of the case pressing heavily on Julie's family and the public. The evidence against Althea, Marvin, and Brian was overwhelming, but the final decision rested in the hands of the jury. When the jury returned, their verdict was unanimous: guilty on all counts. Althea was convicted of masterminding Julie's murder, while Marvin and Brian were found guilty of carrying out the crime. The judge, in delivering the sentences, condemned their actions as a betrayal of the highest order and an affront to the very idea of trust. Althea received a life sentence without the possibility of parole, a punishment that reflected the gravity of her role in orchestrating the crime. Marvin and Brian, whose cooperation and confessions had been taken into account, were each sentenced to 40 years in prison. For Julie's family, the verdict brought a measure of closure, but no real solace. The pain of losing Julie, compounded by the betrayal that led to her death, was a wound that would never fully heal. "Justice has been served," Julie's mother said outside the courtroom, "but it doesn't bring my daughter back." The public reaction to the verdict was one of relief and vindication. Social media platforms were flooded with messages of support for Julie's family and condemnation of Althea's actions. The hashtags Justice for Julie and Betrayal of Trust trended once again as people reflected on the lessons of the case. The trial sparked widespread conversations about the complexities of friendship, jealousy, and trust. Advocacy groups used Julie's story as a platform to raise awareness about toxic relationships and the dangers of unchecked envy. Workshops and community forums were organized to educate young people about recognizing red flags in friendships and maintaining healthy boundaries. For many, the case was a sobering reminder of how seemingly close relationships could mask hidden resentments. "This isn't just about Julie," one advocate said during a panel discussion. "It's about understanding how trust can be exploited and how we can protect ourselves and others from harm." In the years following the trial, Julie's family and friends worked to honor her memory through initiatives aimed at empowering young women and fostering healthy relationships. The Julie Rodelas Foundation was established to provide scholarships for aspiring models and support for victims of domestic and relational abuse. The foundation's mission was clear: to ensure that Julie's story would inspire change and prevent others from experiencing similar tragedies. Through its efforts, the foundation helped countless individuals find the strength to pursue their dreams and recognize their worth, carrying forward the light that Julie had brought into the world. Julie's death was a tragedy that revealed the darkest sides of human nature, but it also served as a powerful reminder of resilience and the importance of justice. Her story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of jealousy and manipulation, as well as a testament to the enduring strength of those who loved her. As the community reflected on the case, one message resonated above all: trust is a gift, one that should be cherished and protected. For Julie's family, ensuring that her legacy lived on was the greatest tribute they could offer to a life taken far too soon. The tragic death of Julie Ann Rodelas left a lasting impact not only on her family and friends, but also on the community and the nation at large. Her story, one of betrayal, ambition, and an untimely end, resonated deeply with people from all walks of life. As the years passed, Julie's memory became a rallying point for change, a call to action to address the darker aspects of human relationships and ensure that her death was not in vain. For Julie's family, moving forward without her was an immense challenge. Yet, they found strength in their determination to honor her life and legacy. The establishment of the Julie Rodella Foundation was a pivotal step in turning their grief into a force for good. The foundation, dedicated to empowering young women, offered scholarships, mentorship programs, and resources to those aspiring to careers in modeling and entertainment. Fields that Julie herself had dreamed of conquering. The foundation also became a beacon for victims of relational abuse and betrayal, providing counseling and support services to those navigating toxic or manipulative relationships. Through its initiatives, the foundation sought to educate individuals about the importance of trust, boundaries, and self-worth, ensuring that Julie's story would inspire others to protect themselves and value their dreams. At an annual memorial event hosted by the foundation, Julie's mother addressed a crowd of supporters, her voice filled with both sorrow and resolve. "Julie was taken from us too soon, but her light still shines," she said. "Through this foundation, we're carrying her legacy forward, helping others avoid the pain we have endured." Julie's murder and the betrayal at its core struck a chord with her community, leaving an indelible mark on how people viewed trust and relationships. In the aftermath of her death, the community banded together to foster a culture of vigilance and support. Neighbors, friends, and acquaintances became more attuned to the signs of toxic dynamics, encouraging open communication and mutual accountability. Schools and community organizations implemented programs to educate young people about healthy friendships and the dangers of jealousy and manipulation. Workshops focused on teaching emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, and recognizing red flags in relationships. These initiatives, many of which were inspired by Julie's story, aim to create a generation equipped to navigate complex social dynamics with empathy and awareness. Julie's story transcended her immediate community, sparking nationwide conversations about the pressures young women face in competitive industries, the complexities of friendships, and the devastating consequences of unchecked jealousy. Advocacy groups used her case to highlight the need for stronger support systems and legal protections for individuals in vulnerable situations. The media played a significant role in amplifying these discussions. Documentaries, articles, and panel discussions delved into the societal and psychological factors that contributed to Julie's death, shedding light on the broader issues at play. While some criticized the sensationalist tone of certain coverage, others praised the focus on awareness and education. Julie's case also prompted calls for systemic change. Lawmakers proposed measures aimed at addressing relational abuse and promoting emotional well-being in schools and workplaces. Though progress was slow, the conversation sparked by Julie's story laid the groundwork for long-term change. In the years following her death, Julie's life and legacy became a source of inspiration for artists and creators. Documentaries and dramatized portrayals of her story brought her tragedy to a global audience, ensuring that her memory would endure. Visual artists, musicians, and writers use their platforms to explore the themes of trust, betrayal, and resilience, creating works that honored Julie's life while advocating for change. One of the most impactful projects was a documentary titled Broken Bonds: The Julie Ann Rodelas Story. The film chronicled Julie's life, the investigation into her murder, and the trial that followed. It received critical acclaim for its sensitive and nuanced portrayal of the case, serving as both a tribute to Julie and a call to action. The importance of trust and the devastating consequences of its violation. Her death highlighted the need for individuals to recognize the warning signs of toxic relationships and to seek help when faced with manipulation or betrayal. Advocates emphasized the value of fostering open and honest communication in all relationships, whether personal or professional. Trust is the foundation of any healthy relationship, one advocate said during a panel discussion. But it's also something that must be earned and protected. Julie's story teaches us to value our relationships while remaining vigilant. For Julie's family, the journey of healing was long and arduous. Yet, through their pain, they found purpose in ensuring that her death would not be forgotten. The foundation they created, the stories they shared, and the awareness they raised became a testament to their resilience and love for Julie. At a memorial event marking 5 years since Julie's death, her sister spoke about the impact of her legacy. Julie was more than a victim, she said. She was a bright, beautiful soul who brought joy to everyone she met. Through her story, we are making sure no one else has to experience what she did. Her light continues to guide us. Despite the darkness surrounding her death, Julia's legacy became a beacon of hope for many. Her story inspired change, promoted awareness, and encouraged people to reflect on the importance of trust and the dangers of jealousy. Through the efforts of her family, friends, and community, Julie's memory lived on, not as a tale of tragedy, but as a catalyst for growth, healing, and empowerment. As the years passed, Julie's name became synonymous with resilience and strength. Her life, though cut short, left an impact that extended far beyond her immediate circle. For those who knew her and those who learned her story, Julie remained a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the face of betrayal and loss, love and light could prevail.